And that's why fairy tales aren't necessarily accurate, because the happily ever after thing could work, but it doesn't necessarily look happy all the time. If you can only support creators who provide value and make you think, please consider contributing to my Patreon page the next time you watch one of my videos. Hello everybody and welcome. Today I kind of wanted to talk about base assumptions. Now, a lot of people comment on judgment and they say that we can't fully escape judgment because it's a survival mechanism, it's built right into our system, and you can't help but make certain judgments because they will help you survive. You know, if somebody appears frightening to you, you automatically retreat. You withdraw and potentially save yourself from harm. Now, there's no way to know for sure whether harm would have occurred had you actually associated with that person, but it is usually better to be safe than sorry, especially in that kind of circumstance, because if you don't get that warning feeling and you enter the conversation with that individual or something like that and something bad does happen, you know, there's no guarantee that you're going to survive it. So I understand where many people are coming from with this whole judgment thing, where they're like, well, you can't fully escape judgment. The problem is when you judge people in pretty much any form, you are limiting your ability to learn from them. Now, this isn't entirely a bad thing. Like the situation where you're afraid of somebody, the fear is actually going to limit that capability as well. So yes, it's probably better not to associate with that person. Similarly, if somebody is angry, you're not going to have a good interaction with that individual. But when it comes to other kinds of assumptions, like that person isn't worth my time, that person looks funny, so I don't really want to deal with them, or, you know, things like that. I mean, you don't necessarily know your unconscious judgments most of the time. But if you are consciously trying not to associate with somebody, definitely go inside and be like, okay, so what exactly am I feeling? What is the reason behind this desire to leave? If it's a fear-based desire, definitely I support that decision to leave. If it's an anger, like you have a feeling this person is angry or mean or hurt or potentially going to hurt you, I definitely think you should leave that situation as well. However, if it comes down to some kind of bias that you have built into your own system or has been built in through your past, you know, via family or a society you were raised in, then I definitely recommend trying to drop that bias and interact with that individual. Now, this is not to say that you have to interact with every human being you come in contact with. I certainly don't. I don't expect you to. But if somebody comes up to you and wants to have a conversation and you don't have the desire to instantly run away because you're afraid of them, then you need to be able to fully engage in that kind of conversation. Because from my perspective, that person came up to you for a reason. Either they have a lesson for you or they need to learn a lesson from you. Possibly both. I think most of the time it is both. We just don't necessarily find ourselves open to learning lessons from other people as much as we are open to teaching them lessons. And this can be a potential problem. And this ultimately comes down to the whole bias concept again, because bias really shuts down a conversation quickly. It's amazing how quickly bias can shut down a conversation, because one person feels judged and then they go, well, you're not going to listen to anything I have to say anyway, so why talk? You know, why continue this conversation if it's not going to go anywhere? If I can't learn anything and you're not going to listen to me, because I'm hurt now and you're prejudging, so neither of us are open and we might as well finish here. So when it comes to setting your base assumptions, you really should come from the perspective of generosity. You know, come from the perspective of this person has something of value to offer and they need something from me, and I am willing to help them and accept their help in return. So essentially it's switching your thoughts to the concept that everybody has something of value to offer you. And I've mentioned this concept on a couple of occasions. This is one of the assumptions that I try to implement in my own life the most. But I understand that for a lot of people, this is going to be a challenging transition because you are raised with so many biases implanted into your reactionary structure. And it can be quite the challenge to shift your natural responses, but you do have to start recognizing that your natural responses are usually something that's been built in through practice, not something that is innately true. And it can be challenging to distinguish which ones were your decision to have and which ones your family or your society have implanted in your brain. Concepts like marriage, for example, society tells us that marriage is a good thing, that marriage is between male and female, things like that. And obviously that doesn't work for everybody because not everybody's straight and, not everybody wants to have a relationship with just one individual. Now, it's entirely possible that some of these things have issues within themselves as well, but it doesn't help to judge them at all. There's also the high probability that there are some issues with straight relationships. Pretty much every relationship is going to have some problem because the only reason you're in a relationship is to grow, which means that, the other person has something of value to offer you, you have something to offer them, and you came together to learn, which means that you're going to have some kind of conflicts at various times. How you handle that can differ depending on your own personal development, but you will have some tension. There will be some contrast. So it's not always going to be smooth sailing. And that's why fairy tales aren't necessarily accurate, because the happily ever after thing could work, but it doesn't necessarily look happy all the time. So when you live in a society that has, say, the base assumption that all couples should be married and they should have one male and one female in them, then when you see somebody outside of that normative setting, you kind of prejudge them. You go, well, they're not normal. They're strange and weird, and I don't like that. They don't fit into my worldview, so I don't want to be associated with them at all. And that can be problematic because if you look at the world and go, well, maybe there's nothing wrong with them, which is another video I did, then you can start to recognize that maybe there's a reason they are the way that they are, and maybe it's actually beneficial to both them and to you and to society as a whole. Now, I can't say for sure what that benefit is, but to assume that there is one is much more effective and beneficial to you than to assume there's something wrong with them and that you need to eliminate all differing opinions. I think this is the reason why utopian concepts can't ever work out, because in utopia, it's the concept that everybody believes the same thing. And that can only work if the beliefs everybody share are so general that they don't inflict judgment on others, which means that your judgments have to be along the lines of everybody has something to offer, everybody has a good reason for what they do, there's nothing wrong with anybody, we're all just living our own lives, and, everybody deserves to be treated with value and respect. These are the kinds of belief systems that could lead to a utopian society, but it's going to be a very varied society, because you're going to have many different kinds of people, many different personality types, many different religious beliefs, many different political standings. It's still going to be very contrasting. There isn't going to be a universal norm for people, but the difference here would be everybody is willing to accept the difference rather than judge people for their difference. And that is a huge shift that I think we're moving toward, but we're not moving there all that quickly, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I do think it would help for us to move there a little bit faster so that we don't have to face this upcoming technological world in a reactionary way, we can actually start getting ahead of the shift, which would be great for us as humans. So when you start looking at these kind of general beliefs that you need, you have to really reassess all the beliefs that you've had in your lifetime and reassess what beliefs are beneficial to you, and you have to kind of look at why you have the beliefs that you have as well. And it's not an easy thing to do necessarily, because you're kind of sifting through your entire personality looking for standardized systems and seeing if they're detrimental to you. And that's going to be really hard to see because you have lived with them for so long that in your brain they look good. You know, they look beneficial, they look normal to you. So it's going to be challenging to look at that idea with unbiased eyes and be like, well, is that actually beneficial? And I guess the easiest way to do that is to really start to gauge what it would be like from somebody else's shoes. So this is the whole walking a mile in somebody else's shoes concept again, where you catch a belief that you want to evaluate a little bit, and then you start stepping into the shoes of other people. Like you step into the shoes of the opposite gender, you step into the shoes of somebody from another country, you step into the shoes of somebody from an entirely different religious background, and you start to evaluate the belief based on those different perspectives. And if you find issues, then you know that there might be something off about the belief. It might not be that the whole belief is wrong, but if you find yourself judgmental or angry at any point during that process, it does indicate that there is some potential pitfall in that belief structure, and you might want to work on shifting it. So the best way to go about this is through meditation. And I know that Teal Swan talks about how if you just sit in silence and you ask your inner self essentially to tell you what it is that you need to shift or want to change within yourself, you will get answers. And then as you allow the messages to come through, you can slowly start to process through these concepts and, shift your perspective a little bit so that you are more allowing of the world around you. And while a lot of people are going to look at this and go, oh, so you're asking me to be accepting of everybody, well, what do I get out of this? Actually, the reason that I want you to be more accepting is for your benefit, because when you're judgmental, you're angry, usually. Judgment usually is a negative vibration. You're moving in the direction of this person is not good, or something along that line, and that's not going to help you at all. So if you really want to grow, if you really want to be your true self, if you really want to live the life that you were meant to live, and follow your path, it's better not to think about other people in a judgmental way at all. I mean, the only time that you would really be considering other people is when there is something you want to accomplish and you need help, or you want to have social interactions, make friends, things like that, get the personal connection and so on. So letting go of judgment might be good for the people that you're not judging anymore, but ultimately it's for your sake that I want you to do this process. And you might not fully understand what I mean by that, but if you start doing this process, you'll probably understand eventually. That sense of clarity will come through. So I definitely recommend that you start working on these kinds of things. I know it's not going to be easy, and I know that it sounds like a lot of work, and it very well might be, but I do think it's worth the time and the energy that you will be putting into this. So that is everything that I have to say today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, maybe got you thinking. Whatever the case, I appreciate any likes you leave on that video, or if you press the subscribe button and the notification bell, that would be great. If you have any questions or comments or ideas that you want me to discuss, or questions about this particular concept that you want me to follow up on, definitely leave those in the comments and I will do my best to answer or accommodate your requests. But yeah, that's everything. So thanks for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Bye.